of independence actually visible 61 years later? My name is Priscilla Regina Naloga, and welcome to the dialogue. Now, Ugandans are still hoping for a government that will deliver on these values: a free and democratic state that embodies respect for the inherent dignity of human persons and the direct participation by citizens in not just choosing their leaders, but also holding them accountable. However, both under Obote's rule and after, this dream has been repeatedly dashed. Instead, immediately after independence, Uganda was ushered into a cycle of contested electoral outcomes, abrogation of the 1962 constitution, unprecedented authoritarian rule, civil wars, and military invasion, which caused a near-total collapse of the state and led to 8 violent changes of governments within a period of 24 years. And we're looking from 1962 to 1986. Now, 60 years down the road, how transformational is Uganda in terms of politics as well as economics? We are joined by Mr. Timothy Kalyegira, who's an analyst. Good morning to you, sir. You're most welcome.
Thank you.
And I would like to hear your opening comment on 61 years of Uganda.
What comment do you want to hear?
Are we on the right track, or are we on a sluggish track?
Well, of course, as I'll be saying, we're on the wrong track, and we'll continue being on the wrong track for the next 40 years. So it's going to be a century of lost time.
Okay.
That's my summary.
Next to him, we do have Mr. Ronald Kiggundu, who is also joining us, an advocate in his capacity to give us his opening marks regarding 61 years of independence.
I think I really wouldn't divert from Mr. Timothy Kalyegira analysis, because we could be there, but we are not yet there. There's quite a lot that needs to be done. Yes.
Okay. It begs the question, what should have been done so that we are there where the two gentlemen speculate we ought to have been 61 years later? But perhaps Honorable Member of Parliament Kagoma North County has a different perspective to the matter in his introductions, and that is Brandon Kintu. You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, viewers.
Good morning. Is your perspective different?
Well, very different, because 61 years I'm a member of Parliament. I wasn't born then, so they are very serious, remarkable achievements. But you know, understanding and how we look at different things is also different, but have been remarkable in terms of so many things if you move and see and you live in Uganda. So I would like actually to congratulate Ugandans for really standing up to now, and we are hopeful that we're still on track to see many more achievements ahead of us.
Okay. When you say when Ugandans move and see, what exactly are you pinpointing at?
For those that have lived longer in this country, and for some of us who read and see and have interest, we look at different sectors. Let's just quickly, I know when you talk about the infrastructure, say for the out of Kampala, where we still have lots of issues, but you can access this country. 1 month ago, I interested myself to know better about my country, and I made a road trip in the west and the east and the West Nile of this country. It was very accessible, and then I was like, well, this is my country, and I ought to talk about it proudly with my head high. So that's one thing, and I'm still insisting that for those that have lived here longer than me, and those who have interest, and those who read, let's look at all sectors. Let's look at the expression view, like we are here this morning to express ourselves. Yeah, when you read history, when I was growing up in Busoga, my grandmother had a wooden radio, and we would only listen to KBC, and the only thing that would be there would be songs to praise by then the President of Kenya, and the frequency was fixed to that. But look at now with the freedom of expression, mass communication, we have analysts, you can give your analysis everywhere. So we have immensely exercised this kind of modernity we're talking about every day. But of course, there are very many divergent ideas where people don't appreciate. Let's look at, in all sectors, education, but people still continue lamenting. To me, I believe, since I don't have any program of going away tomorrow, I believe in looking at how do we do better. But I don't want to lament and mourn that there is nothing that has been done. and yet we can have the platform to rectify that.
Well, it's not lamenting and mourning because we have to do comparisons here and there, and I believe our analyst here, Mr. Kalyegira, in comparison to other countries and other states that are relatively within the same time frame of independence. You look at the UAE, you have Singapore to mention but a few, who have made bigger milestones in terms of economics and political development and social development compared to us, Uganda. And yet everything we have, they have resources, we have resources. They have leaders, we have leaders. What makes the difference for us that we seem to be lagging behind?
Well, in simply one word, the minds, the personalities, that's what we don't have. When you say they have resources, actually some of them don't have resources. You know, Japan doesn't have resources at all. It only has sulfur deposits. This Japan that makes everything, like 90% of the cars in Uganda, has zero resources. There are more resources in, in Jinja district than in the whole of Japan. So it's clear that what the Japanese have is the mind that we don't have, mind at a very advanced level. So that's just why I'm skeptical about these 61 years. The MP mentions all these roads infrastructure. Yes, if you look at things on the surface, yes, we have all these roads and whatnot. The question then is who built them, who funds them, and then you begin getting to the crux of it. Mm-hmm. What happened to the Ministry of Works that we used to have decades ago? If you go through all these towns in Uganda, from the shops to the pavements, essentially 95% of merchandise you see is made in China. From electronic equipment to pairs of socks, children's toys and whatnot, flooded every single town in the country. So if we speak about independence, yes, there's an abundance of goods if you see them. Yes, we have these new central markets across the country. Yes, we have second, third power dams, but then who built them? Foreigners. Every once in 8 or 7 months, we hear this terrorist alert. The UK has advised its citizens in Uganda to be alert to the possibility of terrorism, and then that guides Uganda's security. If even just detecting terrorism or terrorist threat in your country is still dependent on a foreign country, what kind of independence is that? I could go on and on and on and on. Just that.
Okay, all right. Mr. Kiggundu, perhaps you have a different, spectrum to this whole. In comparison to the other countries that are in the same birthday times as we, Uganda, do you believe that we should have been somewhere better than we are today?
We should, definitely we should, because like you compare to Singapore, Mauritius, and all those countries, and just even like Kenya here, just the countries that are very close to us, Rwanda and all that, you find that there's in terms of service delivery, we could really be very far. We could really be very far. I was seeing recently, one of the artists was posting that I think the government wants to build a studio for all artists, and he said this is ridiculous. I mean, in a normal world or in a normal developing country, you would find that you don't need to give people money or handouts. No, it won't really develop them. Mm-hmm. Just put services for them. I was saying that, okay, why don't we have, at least in each sub-county, some of these programs are probably brought, but they're probably brought in a good spirit, but the implementation is the problem. And then who implements? Who funds? Most of them are IMF, most of them are World Bank projects. So you find that there is an interest, that there are conditions tagged to them, which we have to endure as a country, which is a long-term plan for our children, for our families. So it was this article was saying, okay, why don't we have probably a studio in each sub-county? You don't need to give people money. Somebody from deep down in Usoga, from deep down in Masaka, from deep down in Kabong, they will walk to that studio. Probably there is a studio, there is a playing ground, there is a pitch. Just put services closer. They don't need to walk to Kampala, all of them. The talents will bring them to Kampala. They'll get known from what they do from that side. So some of these things will just have to get services closer to people. But you find that probably the interests of some of our leaders, and because most politics is about interests. is about interest. What is, where they have interest is where they will put a niche. Yes, but if they don't have interest in something, you'll find that things will not move. Otherwise, we are. I think I hail Tanzania's president, His Excellency Samia, where I think she diverted the funds to. She said, okay, these celebrations, how much are we going to spend? Can we divert this money to this? Probably some of those things would see results in terms of service delivery. Yes.
Okay. You have talked of interests. When we look back to history, you get to see that there was a serious interest in the health sector in Uganda, that it was actually a tourism hub as far as medical was concerned in the East African region. You get to look at agriculture and how resourceful it was to us as a country, that it used to benefit us on the global markets in the different crops that we used to trade in at the time. So it begs the question, Honorable Kintu, have the interests of the government changed, and those changes, are they really aiding us to the required development and the pace that we are at?
Not really. Last week we went to Bugisu, and I was actually seeing a documentary on NTV about coffee growing. Bugisu is a coffee hub. We used to do some bit of cotton growing in Busoga, the side of Namasagali and Bupung. We have opened up to the Uganda Investment Authority and also encouraging people. The interest of government has not changed, because I want to interest you to find more, and you'll agree with me that Uganda is changing into a private sector-led country at the moment, with so many opportunities of investments open. In my constituency, we have Kira Motors, which is assembling, manufacturing. We are still building capacity. Of course, somebody would literally tell you, which is true, that Jinja is an industrial hub. If those days when I was still in Jinja College, the industries I used to, those traditional industries, vis-a-vis what is there now, there are very many industries. Only that probably I would agree with Mr. Kalyegira talking about the mind, that the mindset, our mindset as a country, as citizens, is totally different. You will set up these innovations, encourage people, they will not want to work. Because apparently in Uganda, politics has been the most growing economic activity. Everyone wants to get in politics, even not knowing the output. So people are used to, like what the council says, being subsidized to, they will just go to an individual. Yesterday I was in my constituency for a burial. But immediately after the burial, I spent over 1 hour trying to bargain, how do I leave this burial? Because practically everyone was waiting to ask for the money from the MP, because now that is the culture. So, but how do we, however much we can be innovative, government brings program, how would we change the mindset? The way he tells you, how do we perceive that if it's poverty, we have this leader will go, leaders come and leaders go, but leadership remains. How do I get out when we're in church and we are all poor, from the priest up the last person who is at the door gate collecting offertory? It won't help. This church will still be in scramble. So we must also work on our mindset as a country, and this calls for all our total responsibility, because we are government. Like I sit in the other arm of government, which is parliament. What is my responsibility? If I do appropriation, do I also take time to go and do my oversight? Yeah, this is what has been failing. What they are saying, there are so many programs, government interest, open up. We just lost yoga. Now we do have the parish development model, some other program. We have so many programs in the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. So we have to work out on the mindset of people. People not only thinking that there's also a certain set of benefactors, but we as citizens, and this is our challenge. This is my country, because if I am NRM, I speak for the NRM caucus in Parliament, but I first have to be Ugandan before I go to NRM, because tomorrow you never know. Who knows, I may be in another political party. So the government has not lost interest. The government has come up with different innovations, and there are so many interventions. That's why we're insisting that we want to push down to the parish level, that at least every parish would have access to money.
You have mentioned of the barrier scenario yesterday, which begs the question of the monetization of politics. How did you handle that? Did you give them some shillings?
Well, I don't want to miss heaven, because I'm an ex-seminarian, so I don't want to lie. Of course, there are some situations. I told you I spent 1 hour. So in my simple thinking, the 1 hour I made analysis, who would be worth it if somebody came with a crying baby at the door of my car and he's saying, really, look at the baby, I wouldn't know whether it's stage managed or it was real. So I would feel compassionate. Of course you do, because that's what he says, Council, that it's not actual only government, but even us leaders, even in videos. Somebody will wait till hear Council is here, and then he will start coming, Oma, you know, I'm supposed to go to the village, I'm stuck here. Politely will pull out something. So that asking.
But I think that it is a culture, like it is, you know, all these things are brought about society. Who manages this society? Who is in charge? That is where the problem comes from. Who takes charge? Who does what? Because right from the word go, most of the people came from humble families, but were satisfied with a little. Even if there was a function at the neighborhood, when they have not invited you, you would not step there. But these days you will do a kuchala or a kwanjula or a wedding, and you have not invited kids. All of them, they will be all over the photos. They will be all over the function, because the population is hungry. People don't have what to eat. Those are the basics. Because you used to be, they could invite your mother or your father, and you could not step at the function unless they probably bring for you something. You couldn't. So those are small things, but that's why you see that the society has really degenerated from that period. Because giving out money, like he said about the parish development model, the Myoga, most of those, if you analyze if they have had an impact, probably they have not. Because I was in Bunamwaya recently, and I was talking with the chief, they call them the chief, the parish chief. Yes. Then I was asking him, how do you give out this money? They said, we do an analysis, we visit these people. Then after there, they form a group of 20 people, then we give them each 1 million. So then what is the impact of 1 million? I don't know whether Mr. Kalyegira can give us the analysis. If you go to a supermarket with 1 million, how much do you come out with? That's why you see things from, because you used to go with 1 million or 50,000 in the shop, and you could pick things that are worth it. But these days you cannot. So if you give people 1 million, is it giving them an impact? What is the impact of that 1 million? Why don't you look at that money and you say, okay, if people in Bunamwaya have this problem, why don't we put this A, B, C, D? If this is their problem, if it is the roads, if it is probably a medical facility so that people can get services. So for me, that's where the problem comes from. Giving handouts to people is not going to develop them. It's not going to change them economically. It's about changing their mind, like he said, and then getting services closer. And
it keeps the honorables closer to their people for the next elective
But not giving them money, not giving them money.
Yeah, but you see, if the system is broken, then they look up to the, as you say, they look up to the leaders to sort that out. We're going to be taking a short break, but when we return, of course, we'll turn to Mr. Kalyegira to give us an analysis of economies compared to different other economies that have tried out these development programs. What has been their scale of success compared to us here in Uganda, right after this break. Started looking at Uganda's political and economic state 61 years down the road, and where we left it off, we left it with Mr. Kalyegira to give us an analysis of different economies. The scales of economies, of course, are the same across the different states. However, when you look at government interventions and the government initiated programs, they're good on paper, and probably in structure they seem to be good, but they don't seem to be giving us the reward in time for us to see the desired socio-economic development. Now, we want to hear from you in comparison to other states that have tried out similar programs. What has been their development scale compared to Uganda?
Before we talk about other states, let's just talk about even other governments within Uganda. Okay. Different periods of Ugandan history. Let me ask the simplest test of all. If you were to start to go one by one among our cabinet ministers, MPs, starting with President Museveni and the First Lady, how many of today's dignitaries in the political class can take their children to the schools that educated them? Can President Museveni take his children or grandchildren to Chamati Primary School? No. Has he taken even his children to Intari? No. Or these, just that simple thing. How many of, just think of any honorable person you know, and that's the difference. That in the 1950s, 1940s, your remote Chamati Primary School could produce a future head of state like Museveni. And that same Chamati Primary School produced the area Katagayas, Augustine Rosendanas, such people. Today, the same primary school just can't produce anybody who at most will become maybe like an LC 2 or 3 person. So that, if I look back away from government programs today, but thinking over 60 years, that's just the test. In ours today, you almost have to take children to international schools or schools and universities abroad to get the equivalent of what was really affordable missionary education in the 1950s, 1960s. That little thing is what I'm talking about. Now, if you speak about government programs, since you brought this up here, I mentioned it in the Sunday Monitor when I was reviewing the PDM program. This idea of we have billions of shillings to be dumped into the population to help them invest will not work out, not because I'm anti-government, but because of several things. I mentioned you need to have a whole group of technical people, not just political figures. You need forestry officers, you need agriculture extension workers, you need financial advisors to help these farmers and those people getting the 1 million shillings on how to invest. But you need a whole group of technical people. You need veterinary experts, you need botanists, you need that type of people to advise them on the crop rotation, all the basics we study in agriculture and science at school. Then the PDM can work. Have you had anybody mention that? No. It's just when it was launched, there was ministers, MPs, NRM cadres going out to so-called popularize it.
Yeah, most recently we were talking to the Prime Minister and she mentioned that they're now giving money to, the parish structure so that they don't embezzle the money. So they're taking care of their housing, they're taking care of the, facilitations
you
here
can't
and there, so as not to touch the billions of money.
Yes, he just said that 1 million is not enough today. Okay, let's say even if it were 10 million shillings, you need to get people, as it was in the old civil service of the 1950s under the Europeans. As I said, what is the economy at the local level? It is fishing, timber, it is planting trees, it's agriculture, it is maybe tailoring. You need people. Then very importantly, as I say, you need financial advisors, somebody at the parish level who then comes down, interacts with them and says, if I were you, you'd invest this, this and this. Maybe your goats are not working well given your land. Why don't you invest in chicken because of this? But if you don't create that manpower, the technical officers in especially agriculture, fishing, livestock and whatnot, that's where the money gets lost and wasted. And PDM, as I predicted, is going to be a wasted project, and sure as day follows night, that's what's going to happen. This level of incompetence we see in this NRM government here, I tell you, if you go and read those development reports, if you read these annual Ministry of Education reports, we have this class of people who think Uganda is advancing because they haven't seen better. If you see those reports by the colonial government, then you begin to think that, as some of us have written in the Monitor, President Museveni should not be head of state of Uganda. I think he would be if this colonial government was still here, he would be maybe like a district commissioner somewhere like in Bushenyi or Ntungam or whatever. That's what I'm talking about. So the lack of technical knowledge, the thoroughness, the level of detail, the way those British studied every plant, fish, animal species in Uganda, the minerals, the deposits, we are just a country of jokes. But to go back to the question you asked very briefly, Mauritius got independence in 1976, I think. The Seychelles, the Zambias, 2 years behind us. But the trouble I see is that we're not very different from each other. Even for countries like Malawi, Zambia, Senegal that have never seen military coups, where if you can say political instability is what was Uganda's problem, people have traveled to the Zambias and Malawi say, we're virtually the same kind of society. So I don't think it's necessarily even just a political question. There is something deep in our societies. There's a level of incompetence, cluelessness, lack of education across all levels, top to bottom, state house to parish, that beggars description.
Okay. All right, okay, now let's look at the government in power currently, the NRM, coming into power in 1986. They took over power, they took away the non-political framework, non-party political framework that existed then. And we want to hear from Mr. Kiggundu. In your opinion, 40 years almost down the road, what do you carry as the merits and the demerits of having this political transformation? And does it actually state that we are a sovereign country?
I cannot say we are sovereign. Okay, we are sovereign in the context, in the legal context. Yes, we are, because we are recognized as a country, and But you know, sovereignty comes with being independent. It has issues that come with it. You just don't say that I'm a sovereign without being independent, without trying to be a sovereign in the sense of being a sovereign. So I think we really began well. When the space opened, the problem comes in when the space opened up. Mm-hmm. When the political space was opened, exactly, that's where the problem came from. Or we would have remained there, I really don't know. I think we would have remained there. Mm-hmm. Because you see all political parties are struggling. All of them have been bought over here and there. You see what is in FDC now. You know, the Katonga faction, then the Najanankumbi faction. You wonder what is really happening to this nation. You really wonder what is happening. But because everything is monetized, and because the people are desperate, I sometimes admire the politics of Kenya, because I think all the politicians are financially well. Mm-hmm. Because how much will you really give them? But because we have people who even go in parliament and they cannot afford lunch, they cannot afford fuel. Honorable, you will tell me yes. The MPs, you will find that they cannot.
If they don't get the
salary, exactly, they cannot survive.
Okay, so if they were not members of parliament,
they wouldn't survive.
Okay.
They wouldn't survive. Mm-hmm. Many of them, they wouldn't survive. They wouldn't survive. So that is where the problem comes from, because all of them are desperate. You know, they are thirsty they are thirst. So you cannot deal with a nation with people who have such. What can they do at the end of the day? They are looking at being given vehicles, at being given a good salary, at traveling. Now you see all of them quarreling over traveling, over UN and all that. That shows you where the problem is. Mm-hmm. Because only one person has all the money and he says, okay, if I don't do this, you won't do this. You won't do this, you don't do this. So he will dish money into this faction, disorganize you. So I think FDC is the only partner we had, which had really, because if you look at UPC, it is already, you know, if you look at DP, I won't mention. And NOOP is also already infiltrated. So we are like in a slum, but I really don't know what is. But we have a very big problem that we need to sit as a country and say, okay, where do we want to take this nation? What do we need to do? You know, where we have very good laws as the legal minds, but you find that even implementation becomes a problem sometimes. You know. The Constitution we began very well, but the tampering of the pitching of the Constitution, this and this, if you see, they see a loophole here, this will be a problem to us, okay, let's do this. Because they have the majority now. If you have the majority,
if you have the numbers, you have the
numbers. So, you know, so there's and that has been the trend of manipulating the numbers, creating constituencies in a very small, if you look at most of these constituencies, some of them are very, very small. But because they know, okay, in this constituency, I have a very big support, I have some good numbers, let's put a constituency there. And you find constituencies that are very large, because they are not in support, they will not be split. They will remain as they are, with one MP and same salary and same everything.
Okay.
So
speaking of constitutions, of course, in 1995 we did adopt a new constitution, but over time you have talked about the law amendments here and there. Tojikwatako, I think, was one of those that was very transformational and caused a lot of havoc, rendering this country a bit useless in terms of the power that they have, power belonging to the people, but they seem to have taken it away. So it begs the question, is this document losing its power? Does it need an overhaul and we come up with a new constitution? We have seen Kenya having done that, and if you do comparisons within Kenya and Uganda, where do you see the power of this document for us in the near future?
We really need to go back to where we began from. Because this is the Constitution is the mother law of everything. But if you, like you say, Tojikwatako and those things of age limits and all that, because that gives, it gave a foundation of this nation. It gave, you cannot be, even as lawyers sometimes we say, you cannot litigate all through. You cannot. There's always something to an end. There's always something should come to an end. You cannot be the alpha and omega of everything. You cannot. So when you look at, sometimes I really look at Kenya, like you said, you see how of course they also they have issues, but you see that everybody can have an input. Everybody can have an input, because if you say you remove the term limits, we go to constitutional court rules, and but because who appoints the judges? We also have that problem, because sometimes it gets back to the judiciary, and most of them, of course, So we have a problem of politicians thinking that because I have the majority, I can do anything with this document. That is where the problem comes from, because we have to have limits. The law is very good and funny sometimes. It gives you always.
Okay.
It will tell you when you do ABCD, you can get out of it like this. If you do this, you can get out of this like this. It gives you always of how to maneuver something. So, but at the end of the day, if it loses meaning, it loses value. It loses value, because the initial was, it is two terms. Let another person take over, But of course now they will tell you that it is the people, it is the majority that decided, so it is still. But
so
how did they
the
decide?
fair transition of power is yet to be realized in Uganda. Honorable Kintu, referendum in 2005 opened up for multi-partisan politics, which we believe is a good thing at that time. 17 years down the road, has this country actually benefited from multi-partisan politics to the last person?
I would actually agree with Council what he says, but I want to put a disclaimer on the first statements about MPs. Members of Parliament, we are one of the most highly paid people in this country. We have a very beautiful canteen. For those of you who are familiar, like journalists, you come to a canteen. So there is no single MP that can not afford to have lunch.
By that statement, you meant that if you were not members of Parliament, you wouldn't be affording the lifestyle
most
you
of the
live
members
now.
of Parliament have been having a background. First of all, getting into that Parliament is a very big task. He knows. And I'm sure he has colleagues. And as a lawyer, he knows how much some MPs have to go and negotiate in courts, because it's a very big tug of war we've just been talking about. But that was just a slight moment, because this is the institution I also serve. I've never missed lunch. Even before I became an MP, I wanted to be an MP 3 times since 2011, and I've been in this country. Now, I'll agree with him about we weren't ready. We had referendum, we had Kagyegira, I don't know where he is now, and we had this political party. I think we weren't ready. That's why I'm very happy with the Electoral Commission, with the roadmap, and I really believe if we do appropriate them money and they do the work, it will do us good. We needed serious civic education, how people to appreciate how does multi-party democracy work. These are the fights we're having now, because we did not have the induction. We were in the same one system that was embracing all of us and would just walk through. But now we open, maybe because of pressure, because of some foreign impression, or because of other individual. Because look at these political parties. There are some political parties who are on patronage level. Some people think, if I'm not in this party, it can't be. And there are those people that believe in individuals within the party, where so-and-so is where I will go. That's not multi-party democracy. I wouldn't say that we look at Kenya, because somehow when you try to go into the politics of Kenya, they try to undermine political parties again by going into alliances. They don't give space for political parties to breathe. The NRM government here has opened, people are registering political parties. I have no doubt that within a few months, we might be having another political party out of FDC, and this will not be the first thing, because we had the anti-out, we had so many political parties, we have had people in the DP now in the NOP, people in the DP now in the NRM. So we just have to understand as people, what are the interests, what are the roles. I have happened to live in Netherlands for quite some time and studied there. How multi-party democracy in the Netherlands works is totally different. We do benchmarking at all our levels. Even you in the fourth estate, you go. And I believe Parliament and other agencies. But we need to pick a leaf. How do these people, we partnership into these, with these countries, we sign bilateral agreement, understanding how do we act in multi-party. I'll give you a very quick example. If I drove in the car with one of the biggest political head in Ginger, say Nope, they will start saying that person is a mole, the person was with Brandon, and Brandon is NRM. So, but this is not a do or die thing. We just need to appreciate, this is your opinion, I should respect you, and this is my opinion. And maybe tomorrow I walk away. I believe and subscribe in the NRM because I'm convinced that in these 5 years, the NRM has the manifesto for my people in Kagoma and for my country, Uganda. When I was living in diaspora, we used to have discussions and people are saying there is no government in Uganda. I said to myself at my age, and as a Ugandan who loves his country, what can I do to my country? Said I will not go and build a factory, maybe I would have had the capacity, I will not start an NGO, but let me go and offer myself at a policy level. And that was my mind. When I came here to contest and to be an MP, I was looking at policy formation because I saw and understood that at a policy, if we have good policies, this country would run. If we have good policies, all these sectors we are talking about, we shall be able in management. So this is the same thing in political parties. Why are we making political parties? And most politicians, mainly in the opposition, I'm lucky and no one is painting, though the chief said that president is supposed to be a DC of like a Kabarore. But their issue, their problem is President Museveni. They want to move a dictator, but they cannot even discuss, they cannot dialogue, they cannot sit. We have just seen elections ago where they pulled out Besigye in the TDA alliance. So it's a long way, but I cannot say we go back in the single system. It's good we exercise. We just have to learn the best from out of it. Maybe I would interest these political parties to benchmark on NRM. We have organs throughout this country. We have structures right from the L1. You never know that probably even at NTV we could have a structure. So that's how strong political parties should be built. Okay. We have opened the space. They have expression, they have representation in parliament.
This is not leveled.
Yeah, but who can level it? We have to level it by how do we practice. I told you this in video. Let's look at FDC just shortly. Why are these guys fighting? No one wants to leave FDC. But they are fighting for individuals and supremacy and who has done what. I was on this very television and the two FDC people almost fought because they were fighting for sides. But the ideology, they want to keep the FDC. So we need to appreciate and understand political parties.
Speaking of sides, Mr. Kalyegira, we also have political sides and kingdom sides here in this country. And so over the course of time, there's always been that loggerheads between kingdoms. Of course, most recently, as of yesterday, we did have them being returned home by government with negotiations having made that happen. We've seen this with Uganda Kingdom and so many other kingdoms over the course of time. It begs the question, how do we stop such collisions that we have seen in these 61 years from reoccurring in the next 61 years?
Well, I'm glad you finally mentioned that. You know, the program was supposed to be about 61 years, but it sounds like we're discussing January 26th NRM Day. So going back to the very beginning, that's quite complicated. How to be a republic after 1967, which is what it was, under a central government, but then with these traditional kingdoms. Tricky, of course, countries like South Africa, Swaziland and others have that, the Ghana and others, traditional kingdoms under the republic. I think some of it will take time. The main conflict for most of these 61 years has been between the central government and Buganda. Toro and Kole, not so much, and yes, lately Kasese, maybe. So the answer to your question will just be that I guess over the course of time, through trial and error experience, they will come to coexist. Some, like the Toro, Bunyoro, Busoga entities, are kind of aligned in a sense. They accepted their cultural institutions and they kind of work in conjunction with the government. Buganda still has this sense of, from 1962, it was brought in as a reluctant part of this entity called Uganda, and the tensions still remain to this day. Maybe just the consequence of time. The 30th anniversary of Kabaka Mutebi's coronation, I mentioned the Sunday Monitor, saw him more like return not to the confrontation of Edward Mutesa, but more the Daudi Chwa monarchy. the one that essentially accepted the reality of the British colonial establishment, and during Daudi Chwa's period is when Uganda saw a lot of this, what you call modernization of institutions and all this. And lately, over the last 30 years, you know, this Uganda with its TV stations, radio station, university, and all this. So I think if Buganda were to become somewhat pragmatic and finally accept that it is part of this bigger entity called Uganda and there's no more hard feeling and continues the pragmatic course it's taken since 1993, July 93, then maybe over time that tension will sort of reduce to what's manageable. Yes. This Kasese thing was a very complicated story. I can't get into it right now. Quite tense. And
okay, Mr. Kiggundu, the Kasese story gets you smiling. What are the controversies in there?
Fortunately, I participated in, I was part of the legal team from the initial stages with Honorable Winkiza, Honorable Nzugu, and my land colleagues Viola and Aaron Kiza. It wasn't easy because, like he said, some things, many things were in the background. Quite a lot. It was quite a lot. I'm happy that the people of Kasese can now see their king. But before even I get indulge into that, is I think it's politics, power, and ego. But I think we have to embrace diplomacy. Mm-hmm. I think it's the only thing that can see us work together with these kingdoms, because people, I come from Uganda here, and I have also seen the Kayonga saga, and I was the legal advisor for a group of youth during those days. I also participated in some, I saw what transpired. I saw, we got those people, many of our children, many of our colleagues from cells. There is a lot of thinking that when you empower kingdoms or chiefdoms, they will overtake you. I don't think so. I think we just have to work with them. Mm-hmm. I was talking to Honorable Winkiza yesterday in the night. We had a very long chat about the whole thing about Kasese and all that, and it was really very sad. Do you know that we went to Nalfenya and Kirinya prison when they were arrested. Mm-hmm. After a lot of pressure, many of these prisoners were taken to Kirinya. But if you could see them, how they looked, I can't say. I can't say. 11 of them died in prison. What will government do about those families? 11 of them. Some of them, their families were, wives were taken, properties taken, the palace is not there. They are beginning from scratch. Kasese is beginning from scratch. I think government honestly needs to do something about the people of Rwenzururu. Okay. At least let them rebuild probably their honorable. Your people, you're the ones in government, that side of the legislative.
Speaking of honorable, let's hear his closing remarks on the Kasese subject as we close out on this conversation.
First of all, we need to appreciate that this government values and respects every citizen, irrespective of their cultural dominations. We know that culture is a set of values and morals. The government went ahead to restore kingdoms, like we can name. Recently, even for us in Busoga, and we have good news that very soon we shall be hosting, I think, the world's most beautiful royal wedding. But like Council says, how do we need, of course, culture is very different. Religion and culture and politics, people get attached, one, to their regions and their cultures.
So much.
So there is something as government you need to tread carefully. How do these people get their their values. So I think for the Kasese, it was very unfortunate what happened to that. It was actually very embarrassing. Each time I don't want to see that clip when I see the Mumbere being handled that way by the military people. I just jokingly, out of record, because General likes this joke, I sit with him on the Committee of Defense. So we always tease him, how do you feel that you commanded this? But I think it was very also important because the people, yesterday, the other day I was watching a documentary where some people are saying even our kids do not value their culture. And all these problems of corruption, of indisciplined people are not implementing, doing their responsibility, it all starts from the culture. So if you have been morally brought up in your culture, I think the country will be good. Okay. So that was not nice, but I really pray, and I really pray that the Kasese Parliamentary Caucus, away from their political differences, they can go back and build and also allow people to enjoy their monarchy.
Which brings us to the road of reconciliation and continuous rebuilding of our country, and marks the end of this conversation. Thank you so much for having been with us.